Good evening and welcome to the other side of medicine. I'm Dr. Christosic, aka Dr. J, and that we're glad that you're spending time with us this evening. And I'd just like to welcome all of you first-time listeners. And if you've been listening to the program for some time, well, we'd like to welcome you back as well. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and that is gut health. You all know that I really look to the gut as the primary focal area for helping people to restore their health. And tonight we're going to be looking at the four cornerstones of gut health. 60 million Americans are suffering with irritable bowel syndrome, bloating, and cramping and gas and diarrhea and constipation. And then there's over half of the population have one episode per month at least of gastrointestinal symptoms. So gut health is a major problem here in this country. And so tonight we're going to be focusing on four pillars, the four areas that are so paramount when it comes to gut health. We're going to be looking at prebiotics. We're going to look at probiotics, postbiotics, and symbiotics. These are the four cornerstones of gut health. And if we can get these in order, if we can get them right, and if we can get those areas of our health in the gut, if we get it correct, then our gut will be restored, and then we'll be able to restore our entire body's health by just taking care of these areas. And so if, again, you've never been here before, well, this is the other side of medicine, and we normally have guests on this podcast. But tonight I'm flying solo, and I'm going to be talking about this topic again that's so dear to my heart, and that's gut health. So 20% of the population is suffering with irritable bowel syndrome. So the gut flora, the bacteria inside of your gut, affects so many areas of our health. So if you have a problem with being overweight, if you have diabetes, if you have heart disease, if you have suffering with allergies, or you have, eczema, or you've got mental disorders like depression or anxiety, or you've got chronic fatigue, all these symptoms are linked to the gut. We know that people who are suffering with bloating and gas and cramping, those things, we know that the gut's related to those problems. But when it comes to these other chronic diseases, a lot of people are not aware that our gut has a significant role to play with those conditions. And conventional medicine today is not getting to the root cause. They're just treating symptoms of those chronic diseases, especially when it comes to things like irritable bowel. People are getting medications and they're not getting to the root cause. Well, tonight we're going to dive deep into the root cause of gut health. And we're going to be looking at the microorganisms living inside of our tummy, inside of our gut. Specifically, what they like to eat and what they produce when they eat the foods that they enjoy, and how our decisions that we make every single day affect those microorganisms. So again, we're going to be talking about, as I said, we're going to be talking about prebiotics, probiotics, postbiotics, and symbiotics. Now, prebiotics, okay, that's a type of dietary fiber that our digestive tract cannot break down, but the bacteria living inside of our large intestine can. Now, we don't want to have bacteria growing inside of our small intestine. There's very few living there, but bacteria should be living in our large intestines. And beneficial bacteria will take that fiber, both water insoluble and water soluble fiber, and they will break it down and produce substances we call the probiotics. Again, are the bacteria, but the prebiotics feed the bacteria. And so those bacteria then make substances that are actually waste products for them, but they're beneficial to us. And then we call those postbiotics. So the gut microbiota, the microorganisms living in our gut, play an essential part in so many parts of our body and so many systems, including the immune system. Our immune system can overreact or underreact in situations. If we have infections, you want to be able to have a robust activity of the immune system to be called up and to go after those bacteria that are harmful. But in allergic responses or in autoimmune diseases, the immune system overreacts, and then you have a miscommunication, and we don't want that to happen as well. So the prebiotic fibers, things like inulin and fructooligosaccharides and other types of fibers, as I said, water soluble fibers and water insoluble fibers, the bacteria, the beneficial bacteria, digest them. We can't. And they produce what's known as short chain fatty acids. These short chain fatty acids are byproducts produced from the bacteria that have beneficial effects, and they support healing inside of our body. They boost the immune system. They rev up the metabolism. They help our brain function. They help to protect the lining of the gut so we don't end up having damage to the lining, where you can have bacteria and particles of food getting across the lining of the gut into the bloodstream and causing autoimmune diseases and allergic responses. So we want to protect that lining, and the beneficial bacteria will make these substances that help to protect the lining of the gut. Now, the prebiotics, again is the food. And so the food that the bacteria is enjoying, that they love to eat, we need to eat mostly plant-based foods to provide that for them. You won't find food that comes from animal sources that the bacteria is going to thrive on. It's mostly plant-based foods. And again, it's not in the small intestine that they break these foods down. It's in the large intestines. So what happens is the bacteria breaks down and ferments the foods and produces these short chain fatty acids like acetate and butyrate and propionate. These are compounds that the beneficial bacteria are, again, they're waste products, but we benefit from, including they make vitamins for us. And so we get advantages. Up to 30% of the vitamins that our body uses are made from the bacteria from our gut, if we have beneficial bacteria living there. So the fermentation process is what provides those short chain fatty acids. And again, it helps to also manage our weight so that we don't have excess weight, and it decreases inflammation in our body. So if you're suffering with joint pains, or you have problems with cramping in your gut, well, it could be there because you don't have enough beneficial bacteria to make the compounds to keep things at bay and keep things quiet. So let's talk about some of the things that the microorganisms will do. Again, they improve the absorption of minerals like calcium and magnesium and potassium. So that's a very important function of these bacteria inside of our gut. Now, Prebiotics you're going to find in plant-based foods, as I mentioned earlier, fruits and vegetables and whole grains and nuts and seeds and legumes. That's where you're going to find the fiber to help to feed the beneficial bacteria. And once again, we want to get a wide variety, because the more variety we have, the more different types of bacteria are going to grow inside of us. And so, again, this is called the microbiome. And the microbiome is the microorganisms that live inside of our gut. And we have thousands of them living there, of different species. And, we have 10 times more bacteria living inside of our gut than we have human cells. So it's pretty significant that these microorganisms play a huge role in helping to balance the immune system, regulate hormones, absorb nutrients, again, help our brain function with cognition and memory. So the connection with the microorganisms and our entire body is significant. So we want to eat things like blueberries and bananas and asparagus and onions and garlic. These are the prebiotics that the bacteria absolutely love. Asparagus, again, these are the fibers that the bacteria love. And again, there's different types of fibers. I mentioned there's also what's called a resistant starch. We want to feed the bacteria these resistant starch. And the way we get that resistant starch is if we take things like raw potatoes and we take, for example, you could take rice and you cook it. And then after you cook it and then you cool it down, you put it in the refrigerator and you bring it back out of the refrigerator, then it becomes a resistant starch where it's more difficult to break down. And the bacteria absolutely love that. So eating those resistant starches is something that is very beneficial for a prebiotic. So the advantages of using these starches are significant. And when for example a baby is born and gets its breast milk, it gets what's known as oligosaccharides, and those bacteria in the gut love the breast milk. That's why you should be encouraging mothers to feed the baby breast milk, because that the bacteria love the oligosaccharides that are in mother's milk. And so once again, we start from early age, we can feed those good bacteria, and then it will help to establish a healthy community of beneficial bacteria. And then, of course, when we eat more as we get older, we eat things like, as I said, onions and garlic and asparagus. And those again are a different type of fiber called inulin. And inulin is a fiber that helps, again, to feed the beneficial bacteria. So once again, getting a variety, that is the key. A variety of fresh fruits and vegetables and grains and nuts and seeds is what we really want to get. Now, that's the prebiotics, the food that the beneficial bacteria love to eat. Now, the probiotics are actually, they're live microorganisms. And they're not only bacteria. We typically put it into a basket and say it's bacteria, but probiotics can be yeast, and it could be, various different types of microorganisms that provide these beneficial compounds that they make that help to give us benefits. So again, bacteria and viruses and yeast, these are the probiotics. And I know that a lot of people will gravitate to want to take probiotics and supplements, and I'm not really big on that. Years ago, I would really recommend on a regular basis taking probiotic supplements, but lately, over the last year, I've really gravitated away from taking supplements of probiotics, although I do recommend them sometimes, and I'll talk about the ones that I do recommend on occasion. But I would rather have you get your probiotics, the live bacteria, from food that's fermented. And we'll talk about, the fermented foods, and make sure the foods that are fermented come from the refrigerated section of the supermarket or the health food store. Because if you get them from the shelf that's not refrigerated, you're not going to get the probiotics, the live bacteria. The live bacteria need to be in refrigeration, so that's very important. So things like sauerkraut and pickled beets and yogurt. And by the way, I like to have you use dairy-free yogurt, and also kimchi and those type of fermented foods have these live bacteria in it that help to provide the nourishment and the byproducts, the end products that of the short chain fatty acids that are very beneficial to us. So again, miso is another one. I like to get a wide variety of them. And if you're not used to eating these foods, and especially if you have somebody who has irritable bowel and you got gas and bloating and cramping and that kind of stuff, I would say start slow with the prebiotics and the probiotics, the fermented foods. Don't go too quickly, because you could end up having a war down inside your digestive tract and cause a lot of extra symptoms that you don't want to have. So go slow, add these prebiotic and probiotic foods gradually. And the way I recommend is, maybe it's like taking a tablespoon or two of sauerkraut, a tablespoon or two of pickled beets, and do 2 or 3 of those different type of foods in a small dose, like I just mentioned, and do that for maybe about a week. And then after a week, if that doesn't seem to bother you, you can then increase it a little bit over time as you go and see how your body feels. But to restore balance into the microbiome, you want to get a variety of these probiotic foods. And again, millions of people are relying on supplements, but there's an interesting study that was done out of Stanford University, and they took individuals and they had 3 different groups. One group, they gave probiotics. Another group, they gave fermented foods. And the third group, they gave nothing. And what they found is that the individuals who got the probiotic supplements, in the initial phase, the first week or 2, they saw a rise in the beneficial bacteria inside their gut. But over time, in a period of 3 months, at the end of the 3-month period, they saw a decline in the gut bacteria of the individuals who were taking the probiotic supplements, whereas the individuals who were taking and eating the fermented foods, they saw a gradual increase, and it kept on getting greater and greater and greater in the quantity and quality of probiotics over the 3-month period. And then the individuals who didn't take anything, they just basically stayed the same. So again, taking the fermented foods, the live probiotics in the fermented foods, showed the greatest return for the beneficial bacteria over a 3-month period. And the ones who took the supplements of probiotics over the 3-month period, after 3 months, they saw a decline in the beneficial bacteria inside the gut. So I think it's really important to understand that we don't know enough about taking probiotic supplements. And this study, again, is a cautionary consideration that we should take, because again, we're still learning about probiotics and about their effects and about their benefits and about the drawbacks. Now, if you're going to take a prebiotic, the one that I recommend is not a bacteria. It's actually a yeast, and it's called Saccharomyces boulardii. And I talk about it in much greater detail in last week's podcast. So I would recommend going back to that podcast and looking at the benefits of the Saccharomyces boulardii. Now, the Saccharomyces boulardii, because it's a yeast, it's not affected by the stomach acid. You see, when you take a probiotic supplement and you eat it, the stomach acid is so strong that it actually kills the bacteria. But when you take a yeast, the stomach acid doesn't have an effect on the yeast. So it goes through the stomach, past the small intestine, and gets into the large intestine where it populates, and it gives the beneficial benefits. It helps to boost the immune system by increasing what's called secretory IgA. So it helps to provide strength for your immune system and the lining of the gut. And again, this is something that passes through you. So you're not going to be able to just take it for a short period of time. You have to take it on a regular basis to get the benefit. But the nice thing about it is once you reestablish healthy bacteria, because the Saccharomyces boulardii encourages the growth of other beneficial bacteria, then you could maybe after about 3 or 6 months, you could stop taking it. But once again, it's a very good yeast that helps the immune system and helps to encourage the growth of beneficial bacteria. Again, go back to my podcast from last week and you'll learn about all the benefits of Saccharomyces boulardii. Okay, so now what are some of the symptoms that people experience when they have an overgrowth of the harmful bacteria and not enough of the beneficial bacteria? We call that dysbiosis, by the way. It's too much of the harmful bacteria and not enough of the beneficial bacteria. So people end up having things like diarrhea, which oftentimes occurs after a course of antibiotics, or you can get traveler's diarrhea. You can also get repeated urinary tract infections because you don't have enough beneficial bacteria. They've actually done research studies to show that when people end up having repeated urinary tract infections, when they get them these good beneficial probiotics into their gut, they have less of the bacterial infections inside the urinary tract. They also like problems like skin problems and vaginal yeast that females have, and food allergies, and even things like cancer can be triggered by the wrong types of bacteria living inside the gut, because these bacteria give off what we call exotoxins. These are toxins produced from the bacteria, their waste matter, and the harmful bacteria spew out these toxic elements that can even cause cancer. So you could have inflammatory bowel disorders and, like I said earlier, irritable bowel syndrome. You could have the inflammatory bowel disease like colitis and ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. These are conditions that have been linked to harmful bacteria living inside the gut and not having enough of the beneficial bacteria. Well, once again, these bacteria play a huge role, and there's different strains of bacteria. Now, I compare the strains of bacteria like you would look at breeds of dogs. Okay, all dogs, belong to the same species, but they have all different types of characteristics. They have different sizes and shapes and strength, and they're different characteristics. And that's the same thing with bacteria. There's different, strains, and those different bacteria have different characteristics. And so that's why we talk about getting a diverse diet to develop different types of microorganisms, because each different type of bacteria and yeast and virus likes different foods. And so when you eat one food and you limit yourself to only a few foods, you're only going to have those foods that are those bacteria like. But if you get a wide variety of foods, you're going to get a wide variety of different types of strains of bacteria living inside your gut. So diversity is the key. And we in America have a very limited amount of bacteria living inside of our gut in the average adult American. The average adult American has between 100 to 150 different strains of bacteria living inside their gut. And when you go to underdeveloped countries, they have anywhere from 300 to 350 or more strains of bacteria, of different types of bacteria living inside their gut. So in our gut, the most predominant in humans is called lactobacillus and bifidobacteria. That's the two most dominant strains, about 90% of the bacteria living inside of our gut. But once again, there are a whole bunch of other ones in the periphery that we want to encourage the growth of. And that's why diversity is going to be so important to have so we can get different strains. Once again, I like people and my patients, I encourage them to eat a wide variety of fermented foods. And once again, make sure you have them refrigerated to get live bacteria. Because again, just taking supplements, again, if you take bacteria supplements, there's not a lot of research to show that these things are going to be giving us the kind of benefit that we're going to get from eating these foods that are fermented. You know, the fermented foods people have been eating for thousands and thousands of years. So our bodies are accustomed to that. Taking supplements, we've only been doing it for maybe the last 50 to 75 years. So foods is the best medicine. Now, in my estimation, you want to get as many different varieties of plant-based foods. So if you are suffering with digestive disorders, or you have diarrhea, or you've got inflammatory bowel disease, or you've got autoimmune disease, or you've got depression or anxiety, or the things that I talked about, you certainly want to get a wide variety of plant-based foods so you can get these prebiotics and probiotics. And again, fermented foods is, in my estimation, really the way to go. So when you have a weakened immune system, or you have an overreacting immune system, once again, that's a telltale sign that you're probably deficient in the beneficial bacteria. So again, you want to eat the fibers, the plant-based foods that have fibers, and you want to get the resistant starch that I mentioned as well, to encourage the beneficial bacteria to populate inside of your gut. Okay, so what I recommend is eating a rainbow. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, when you look at your plate, try to have different colors of foods from the plant kingdom on your plate so it looks like a rainbow. So when you've got fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and grains, you're going to be able to get this rainbow colored design on your plate. And you want to try to do that at every meal so that you can get a good variety of different strains of microorganisms living inside of your gut. Now, as I said, eat fermented foods. Again, if you can get things like the kimchi and the dairy-free yogurt. My favorite dairy-free yogurt is called So Delicious. It's a coconut-based yogurt, and there's no sugar. It's plain. You could just take that and you could add some blueberries or strawberries or raspberries, and that's delicious when you have that, and you don't need to have any sugar, because most of the yogurts are loaded with sugar. And sugar, as well as refined grains, feed harmful bacteria. So one of the worst things to eat is refined carbohydrates, which most Americans are getting 60% of their diet is refined carbohydrates. So you want to steer away from that, and you want to lean towards the whole grains, the beans and nuts and the seeds and the grains and the fruits and the vegetables, and stay away from the sugar, the not only the refined white sugar, but when you eat those alcohol sugars, they also disrupt the gut bacteria as well. So stay away from the erythritol and mannitol and sorbitol. All those alcohol sugars disrupt the gut microbiome. They cause an imbalance in the gut microbiome. So when you eat fermented foods, you're going to really significantly increase the beneficial bacteria. And by the way, try to avoid antibiotics as best as you can, and also pain blockers. These anti-inflammatory drugs, they have been shown to significantly decrease the population of beneficial bacteria. So, if you really have to, then you got to. But if you can stay away from them, try your best and get to a doctor that can give you some alternatives to those things so that you don't have to rely on the antibiotics and the anti-inflammatory drugs. There's so many alternatives that you can use in place of the painkillers and the anti-inflammatory drugs and even the antibiotics. There's so many alternatives today that we have. There's so much research to show how beneficial they are as well. And again, using the fermented foods on a regular basis and taking the prebiotic foods and eating those plant-based foods so you can get a lot more of the fiber. Again, the best ones are going to be onions and garlic and the resistant starch. Like I said, the potatoes that are cooked and then refrigerated and then reheated, and the same thing with the rice and sweet potatoes and dandelion greens and jicama and all these types of foods. Getting a wide variety is going to really encourage the growth of the beneficial bacteria inside of your gut. Okay, and then the other thing is you want to look at identifying foods that your body is reacting to. So if you have an autoimmune condition, if you have inflammatory bowel, if you have irritable bowel, you want to get a personalized diet through a blood test. And I've been doing blood testing for food sensitivities for over 35 years, and I've seen miracles on top of miracles happening when people get rid of the foods out of their system that their body's overreacting to. But once you do that for 3 months, just 3 months, then you can put those foods back into your system on a rotational basis, and your body's inflammation will come down. The bacteria that are beneficial will start to grow, and the harmful bacteria will recede. And when you include the prebiotics and the probiotics, then you'll find that there'll be a real balance and harmony inside of your gut. Now, postbiotics, what are they? Well, postbiotics are, as I said earlier, they are produced by the activity, what's called the metabolic activity of the beneficial bacteria, the friendly bacteria. So these friendly bacteria, they will take the fiber and they'll digest it, they'll ferment it, and they'll make these compounds that are, once again, they're waste products of the beneficial bacteria. And they have various health benefits. They're going to help to increase the compounds that are going to decrease inflammation, boost your immune system, rev up your metabolism so you can lose weight, help with your brain function. So these, again, are the postbiotics, the compounds that these microorganisms, they manufacture and they produce as byproducts, they're waste products. and they're going to benefit us. We're the host because they're living inside of us. And they, again, are short chain fatty acids, and they're produced from this fermentation process, and they help to, they go through our entire bloodstream and help to decrease inflammation throughout the entire body. So these postbiotics, they're going to help to improve digestion and absorption and elimination as well of the foods that we eat. So if you're constipated, if you have problems with diarrhea, these beneficial bacteria make these postbiotics that help to squelch those symptoms and decrease, constipation, diarrhea, irritable bowel, allergies, all these things, because these bacteria are partners in health, and they're trying to work with us, but they want, they need some pay, they need some food, they need the fiber rich foods. So you've got to cooperate with them, and you've got to eat these fiber rich foods that the bacteria will then ferment. So what are some of the postbiotics? Well, as I mentioned earlier, there's acetate, which is the most dominant one inside of our body. It's a short chain fatty acid. And that acetate is a short chain fatty acid that revs up our energy inside of our body. And it helps to influence our appetite. So we have less desire for food when we have more of these short chain fatty acids called acetate. So they're involved in revving up the metabolism so we can lose weight, but they also helps us squelch that appetite inside of us as well. So again, these are partners in our health. Now, butyrate, that's a very interesting short chain fatty acid that's produced, once again, by the beneficial bacteria. And the butyrate, one of its primary goals is to help the lining of the gut. It decreases inflammation and restores the lining of the gut. You might have heard about leaky gut, where the gut gets damaged because we don't take care of our body very well. We don't feed it the right foods. We feed a lot of refined carbohydrates and sugars and too much of the bad fats. And so our gut lining gets damaged. And they found that people who are eating the average American diet don't produce enough butyrate. And so they end up with things like inflammatory bowel disease. And they found that people with inflammatory bowel disease have significant less amounts of this butyrate. And the butyrate, once again, helps to repair the lining of the digestive system. So the lining of the gut, where the inflammation occurs when people have inflammatory bowel disease like Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis or any of those inflammatory bowel conditions, those people have less butyrate. And so when you eat the healthy foods, the beneficial bacteria start to grow and proliferate, and then they produce these short chain fatty acids like butyrate, and it then reduces the inflammation. So it's this cooperative measure of working in synergy with nature, feeding the healthy bacteria and getting back in return a dividend, which is this butyrate. So we need to make sure that we're getting the beneficial bacteria to cooperate with us. Now, another one is called propionate, and that is a short chain fatty acid that helps with metabolism, but also helps with insulin sensitivity. So how we utilize sugar. And again, we have like 60% of the population has either diabetes or prediabetes, and that's really very, very sad. So when you have these beneficial bacteria, it helps to prevent things like diabetes and helps to treat things like diabetes. So again, working with nature, cooperating with nature Again, that's everything that we do here on the other side of medicine, is to work with nature so that we can cooperate. Nature is our partner. And if we work with nature, nature will give us back dividends and good health. But if we don't, then we'll have dysbiosis in the gut, and then we won't produce the beneficial bacteria compounds. And then we'll have compounds that are produced that increase inflammation. So when we have harmful bacteria, they produce what's called cytokines that are inflammatory. When we have beneficial bacteria inside of our gut that's growing, they'll produce cytokines that are anti-inflammatory. So you can see there's this balance inside of the gut. And if we cooperate with nature and feed the beneficial bacteria, the prebiotics, the bacteria, the live bacteria will grow and proliferate and diversify. They'll make these compounds that are anti-inflammatory, as opposed to when we eat all these refined carbohydrates, and then we end up having harmful bacteria live, and they produce these cytokines that are inflammatory in nature. So you can see it's all about choices. The choices that we make every single day are going to make all the difference in the world. And again, the beneficial bacteria produce up to 30% of our B vitamins inside of our body, as well as vitamin K. And they don't produce vitamin A, but they help to make the metabolites of the vitamin A. So there's metabolites of vitamin A, which helps our immune system, helps our skin, helps so many things with inflammation. And these beneficial bacteria make these compounds that help to utilize the metabolites, vitamin A, from the vitamin A breakdown products. So we need to get more of these beneficial bacteria so we can have better uptake of vitamins and minerals as well. So, this is something that we can all participate in. We can take an active role in our own well-being. No doctor's going to do this for you. It's the choices you make every single day, and that's the important thing. Now, what are symbiotics? Well, symbiotics are the combination of probiotics and prebiotics. So an example of that would be eating something like yogurt along with let's say, wheat cereal. That wheat cereal is the prebiotic, it's the fiber. And when you have the combination of those two things working together, that's called a symbiotic. So there's many different examples of symbiotics, and that's one. But you can have, for example, a green banana. That's a resistant starch. Remember I mentioned to that earlier. A green banana is that resistant starch. That's a prebiotic, and you can have, again, that with yogurt. You can make it and put that in a smoothie, and that is a symbiotic, the combination of the two working together. Or you could have oats, which is another prebiotic, again, maybe with some yogurt. That would be a combination, would be, again, we call that a symbiotic. So you could have, for example, if you had a dinner that you had some beans with some fermented pickles that were from the refrigerator, that's a combination of prebiotic, the beans, and the probiotic, which is the pickles. Remember that the refrigerated pickles has live bacteria in it. The combination of the two, that's a symbiotic. Or if you had, let's say, something like sourdough bread, like a whole grain sourdough bread, and you had my favorite, which is Myokis butter, Mykis. It's a coconut butter that's fermented. So if you had the fermented coconut butter that has live beneficial bacteria along with your sourdough bread, the whole grain sourdough bread, then you'd have a symbiotic, the combination of the two. So this is the kind of way you could participate in working with the body with these various prebiotics and probiotics, so you can get the beneficial effects from them making these short chain fatty acids, which decrease inflammation. And they have, again, a lot of nutrition. They've got antioxidants in them. They're polyphenolic compounds. These antioxidants are anti-inflammatory by themselves. So when you're eating whole foods, you're getting multifaceted benefits. So it's not just, the prebiotics and the postbiotics. There's also these compounds in them that are antioxidants that are what we call phytochemicals. So that's why whole food nutrition is so important. And food is your best medicine. By eating these whole foods, you're getting all these compounds that work synergistically to help to strengthen your immune system, decrease inflammation, improve brain function. And all these things work together to really make a robust health for you. So, get things like kombucha, and try to get it without the sugar, or get very low sugar kombucha. I like the one that has the fruit juice. It uses fruit juice with very little sugar. And you could take, for example, some kombucha and have some chia seeds with it, which is a prebiotic with the kombucha, and you get another symbiotic. Or you could have one of my favorite, which is miso soup. Miso soup is a probiotic, and then you could have some onions or leeks with it, which is the prebiotic. So again, you work in harmony, getting these symbiotics to cooperate with nature to get the maximum benefit from working together with using these things in combination. So I hope that you will take all this information to heart, and that you will also follow me on social media, because I post once or twice a day on social media, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube. Really, I encourage you, listen to your gut and subscribe to my channel, because I provide lots of valuable information for you, so you and your family can take advantage of the natural ability of your body to heal itself. So once again, my friends, I encourage you to come back next week. I'll have a guest next week. In the last 2 weeks, I've been flying solo, but next week I'll have a guest, and we'll be able to share with you the expertise of all the various physicians and clinicians that I have here as guests here on the other side of medicine. So until next week, my friends, I hope that you will encourage you and your family to eat plant-based foods, of a wide variety of them, and eat slow, chew your food well, eat when you're not in a hurry, and eat when you're not upset. All these things are important to do so you can encourage the growth of beneficial bacteria inside your gut. Well, my friends, until next week, take care, and we'll talk to you then.